We're in a series that we began last week called Desperate for God. That is the theme of our church this year, this idea of being desperate. It comes from John 15, verse 5. Jesus tells his disciples in John 15, apart from me, you can do what? Nothing. Nothing. Let me ask you a question. How many of you are parents in this room? Raise your hand. How many of you are parents of someone over the age of 18? Raise your hand. How many of you remember the day they turned 18 or 20 or 25 and they came to you and said, Mom and Dad, I got this. I got this, Mom and Dad. I don't need you anymore. I know what I'm doing. Back off. Be quiet. I'm an adult now. I can take care of myself. And what you did was you laughed in their face. Oh, little one, you have no clue what you're talking about. And you remember, listen, how many of you are parents of babies and toddlers, people who are still dependent on you for everything right now? You remember that stage where you remember when your kid was completely dependent and desperate for you. You were responsible for feeding them and changing them and taking them from one place to another place. You are responsible for teaching them who to cheer for, who not to cheer for. And mamas, do not let your babies grow up to be Steeler or Tar Heel fans. It's been a horrible week. It's been a horrible week. I'm going to stop right there. Otherwise, I'm going to cry. Listen, they are completely dependent upon you. But here's the deal. At some point, because you've seen this, at some point, children grow up. At least most of them do. And here's the deal. They're still dependent on you. They're still desperate for you. It just looks a little bit different. Hopefully, they're dependent. Listen, hopefully they come to you for advice. They come for you for prayer. They ask you not to turn their bedroom into a man cave so they can come and visit or maybe move back home when they're 32. They're dependent and they're desperate. And here's the deal. Whether you're 18, 38, 58, it doesn't matter. The longer you do life, you get to a place in your mind, your attitude. And make sure you make the connection here. Whether you've been at church for one day or whether you can't remember a day you weren't in church, especially for those of you the longer you've been in church, you now have grown up. You're now spiritually mature. At least we think we are because of how long we've been in church. And so physically or spiritually, we all face the temptation to tell mom and dad or to tell our heavenly Father, God, I got this. I know what I'm doing. Back off. I can handle this one myself. You go worry about something else. This one, I've got. I'm an adult now, God. I've got this. And make sure you hear this until you get to the place in your life where you realize every single day I am dependent and desperate and I need Jesus. Until you get to that place, you'll never see Jesus or life the way he meant for it to be seen. And so what we're taking a look at over these few weeks is we're taking a look at the attitude and the actions. The attitude and the actions of people who are truly desperate for God. Whether you were here last week or not, let me bring you up to speed. Last week we talked about a king, Jehoshaphat, the king of Israel. And God's people were about to be destroyed, slaughtered, wiped off because of the enemy. And Jehoshaphat went to God and said, God, we need your guidance. We need your help. We need your deliverance. Without you, we do not have victory. And last week we made this statement, people who are desperate for God seek the presence of God. Because you realize without the presence of God, there is no victory in life. And what we're about to look at today from this guy, he's going to teach us the spirit of desperation. The spirit of desperation. You've been there before. You've been desperate to pass a test. You've been desperate for a relationship. You were desperate for your team to get a quarterback. Desperate. And here's what I want you to write down. I want you to write this down. Where you're taking notes, write it down in your notes. If you're not taking notes, write it down on your phone or anywhere else. And here it is. People who are desperate for God display great faith in God. People who are desperate for God display great faith in God. Now, make sure you understand this. This is a reality of life. Here's Life 101. It does not matter who you are, how old you are. It doesn't matter your background, your demographic, your nationality. It doesn't matter your spiritual condition. Did you hear that? It doesn't matter your spiritual condition. Every single person in human history has faith. You have faith in something or someone. Faith is simply this. It is the thing you trust and believe that will sustain you throughout the course of your life. It will sustain you, hold you. It'll be the anchor of your life through the roller coaster and the valleys of life. And faith is not only the thing that sustains you, faith is the thing that sees you through to your desired destination. It's the thing that sees you to where you want to go, and it's the thing that sustains you throughout life. And today we're about to look at a guy who needs a miracle. He needs Jesus to show up and do a miracle. And listen to me, there's some of you today, in fact, there's more of us than we probably care to admit, whether here in this room or whether online. We need Jesus to show up and do a miracle. But the barrier for some of us between the miracle that we need is simply this: our faith is in the wrong object. Those who follow Jesus and those who do not follow Jesus, the only difference is the source of your faith. And here's the question today. If you need a miracle, you've tried everything else, at what point will you come and say, Jesus, I believe you're the one who can do this? When will you anchor the source of your life into the right object known as Jesus? And this guy is going to show us the characteristics, the attitude, and the actions of how people who are desperate for God, how they display great faith in God. And in fact, in just a moment, you're going to see this question. Jesus is going to ask this question. In fact, it's the title of the message today. The title of the message today is simply this: what do you want? What do you want? Jesus is going to ask this guy the question, what do you want? Parents, you've been there before, right? You've been sitting there in your lazy boy chair on a Sunday afternoon. Maybe some of you dads have, and you're about to fall asleep. You're leaning back. You're watching the ball game, and your teenage son or your teenage daughter comes up to you, gives you a big old bear hug as you're sitting there, gives you a kiss on the cheek, and says, Daddy, you're the best daddy in the whole world. And they ain't called you daddy in 7 years. And you look at them and you say this: what do you want, kid? Because you know they're up to something. You know they want something. That's not the attitude in which Jesus is asking this question. Go ahead, get it out. Tell me what you want. No. That's not how he's asking. He wants to genuinely know what's on your heart. Let me ask you 2 quick questions before I read this story. 2 quick questions. If Jesus were standing here today, teaching, speaking to us, leading us, if Jesus was standing here, would you do anything to get his attention? Would you want him to know? Now, obviously, he knows everything, okay? But would you want him to know you're here? We've got 350, 450 people in this room right now. Would you do anything above and beyond the crowd for him to recognize you're here? Would you even want him to know you're here? Or would you slump down in your chair and try to hide yourself? And let's just say you got his attention, and he walked off this stage, and he came up to every single one of you, and he leaned down, he stooped down, he sat down, he kneeled down in front of you, and he came and whispered in your ear this question: what do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? Would you have an answer? Or would you say, Jesus, everything? Or would there be something specific? That's the question for today. Because people with great faith, listen to me, people with great faith, they know what they need Jesus to do. And they believe Jesus can do something about it. So let's look at this together. Here's what it says in Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 46. It says, then they reached Jericho, and Jesus and his disciples left town. A large crowd followed him. Now look up here before we continue, because this is important. There are 2 significant reasons why I believe the author of this passage, Mark, told us exactly where Jesus was. Jesus was in Jericho. That is significant for you Bible scholars. And let me just bring everybody else up to speed. Jericho in Scripture is known for 2 primary events. Number 1 is Joshua chapter 6. In Joshua chapter 6, God told his children, the children of Israel, to march around the walls of Jericho once a day for 6 days. And they did that, and nothing happened. No results, no action. God didn't do a thing. And then he said on day 7, march around the city 7 times, blow the horns, and give me praise. And they did that, and the walls of Jericho came down, and the people of God had victory. Listen to me, that is a story of perseverance. It's obeying God even when it looks like God's not doing anything. And you're about to see a story here in just a minute. The rest of this story, it's about a guy who perseveres when people tell him to quit. The second significant story of Jericho, maybe you know about this, is where Jesus was passing through the town and he stopped and he visited a guy at his house, and the guy he visited with was known for two significant things. He was known for being a thief, and he was known for being really, really short. His name was Zacchaeus. You know what Zacchaeus was? He was an outcast. Nobody wanted to go to Zacchaeus' house. In fact, Jesus took guff. Jesus took complaints and criticism for going to Zacchaeus' house. And the guy we're about to read, he's an outcast. Nobody wants to be with him. So Jericho is known for two events that you're going to see play out in this guy's life. But here's the second reason that we know Jericho. It says they reached Jericho. That was not their final destination. Jericho was on the way to another town that they were headed towards. They were headed towards Jerusalem. Jerusalem is where the cross was waiting for him. Jesus was on his way to the cross, on his way to suffering, on his way to death, on his way to the crucifixion, and he had a purpose. He had a purpose. He had a schedule. And he was interrupted by this guy that we're about to read about. Here's a little 30-second rabbit trail for some of you. Is anybody ever able to interrupt your schedule? You're so structured, so organized. Listen, and Jesus is all about structure and organized. I promise you, okay? I can give you a whole lesson on that. But Jesus also allowed himself to be interrupted at the right time in the right moment. Moms and dads, moms, if you're cleaning house, can your kid come up and talk to you? Dads, if you're in the yard cleaning, can your kid come up and talk to you? Kids who are in here today, maybe you should be at kids ministry, but kids who are in here today, when you're playing video games, can your parents interrupt you? Listen to me. Yesterday I was at the gym with Tammy, and I'm standing there and I'm waiting for her to come. And listen, when I go to the gym, I want to get in and get out as quick as possible, just like when I go to Walmart. Just get in and get out. And there I am at the gym, and this 77-year-old man comes up to me in the gym, and he sees my shirt. And my shirt is a reference to a 1980s movie that he had no clue what it was about. So he was asking me about my shirt. And after we talked about my shirt, I asked him, I said, Ron, how's your day going? And when I asked him how his day was going, Ron, right there at Planet Fitness, started crying. He said he had no clue who I was. He had no clue what I did. He said, well, I'm still struggling to get over my son's death. And right there in that moment, for about 3 or 4 minutes, we talked about loss and suffering and how to navigate grief as quickly as we could. The Bible talks about this it's called holy divine interruptions. Jesus was interrupted on his way to the cross, and a miracle took place. Are you in need of a miracle? Some of you came to church today for all kinds of different reasons. You came for all kinds of, it's just part of the routine. It's part of the schedule. But you know what you didn't come to church expecting? A miracle. And Jesus wants to step into your situation and meet your need. So let's read this story. Here's what it says. It says, a blind beggar named Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Be quiet, many people yelled at him, but he only shouted louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, tell him to come here. So they called to the blind man, cheer up, they said, come on, he's calling you. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. My rabbi, which means teacher. The blind man said, I want to see. And Jesus said to him, go, for your faith has healed you. Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. Let me give you 4 characteristics or mindsets, attitudes, actions of someone who has great faith and is desperate for a move of God. Number 1, you got to see yourself the way Jesus sees you. You got to see yourself the way Jesus does. Let me ask you a question as you're writing that down and as you're taking notes, okay? You can still do 2 things at one time, I believe. When you are getting ready for church this morning, how many of you looked in the mirror to get ready for church this morning? Raise your hand. If your hand's not raised, let's look at that person right now. and say, yep, I can tell. When you look in the mirror, you have one of three actions. Your first reaction is this. You look in the mirror. Oh, yeah. Look at that. That is looking good. I could be on the cover of GQ. I don't even know if they still make that. I don't even know if that exists. But all you see is perfection. Or you come up, you look in the mirror, and you go, good enough. It'll work. It'll pass. It's just church. And you go. Or you come up, you look in the mirror, and you go, oh. And you think, that needs a lot of work. That needs a lot of help. By the way, just for you who care about this stuff, on average, women look in the mirror 34 to 38 times a day. Men are a quarter of that, and we can tell. Listen, here's the deal. When you look in the mirror, you see what's on the outside, but you and you alone also see beneath the surface. You see what's on the inside. And for so many of us, what's on the inside, what we see underneath the clothes, underneath the outer shell, what we see is what other people have said about us. Labels, comments. And make sure you catch this. When we are introduced to this guy Bartimaeus, we're not introduced to Bartimaeus. He's given two distinguishable characteristics before we're even told his name. He is a blind beggar. Now, make sure you catch this. When he's blind, yes, there's a physical disability. There's a disease that is hindering his ability to do stuff. Now, we can talk about that because God uses our disabilities for incredible capabilities. But here's the deal. In the first century, make sure you understand this. In the first century, in the context in which Mark wrote this, it is not a physical issue. When you are blind in the first century, it's a theological issue. You can go and read this. Go read John chapter 9. There was a guy who was blind, and Jesus was asked by his disciples. His disciples looked at Jesus and asked him this question because a man was blind. They said, Jesus, who sinned? This man who's blind or his parents? Maybe you weren't born blind, but you become blind. And in the first century, the stereotype was this. If you become blind, it's because of your sin, rebellion, and rejection against God. And nobody wants to be associated with a sinner. And so they don't want to have anything to do with him. And so it's a theological issue. Now, by the way, Jesus makes it clear in John 9 and in Mark chapter 10, this is the result of no individual or specific sin. This is not the result of an individual sin. It's the result of humanity's sin. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man, sin entered into the world. If you were born blind, it's because of the sin, rebellion, and rejection of your parents. But there's not the case here. So they had this mindset, culture, the city, the community had the mindset, this guy's a sinner. This guy has something wrong inside of him, and we don't want it to rub off on us. And then he's a beggar. A beggar meant he's less than. It means he can't take care of himself. He has wasted what he had. In fact, if you were a beggar, you were substandard. You are below average. And nobody wants to be associated with someone who is below average, substandard. So he is a sinner, and he does not meet culture's standard. And so it says he's sitting by the road begging. Now make sure you catch this. This is important. In the context in which that phrase is written, sitting by the roadside begging, you could change the word sitting to living. He was living by the roadside begging. He was an outcast. He was abandoned. This is where he lived. This is where he set up shop. Why? Because of how his community viewed him and treated him. Could you imagine today? Could you imagine today if we were defined or described by others by just our outer condition? Could you imagine? Real quick, audience participation. All right, go ahead. Help me out here, okay? I'm going to ask a question that I know the answer to, okay? So you better raise your hand, okay? How many of you in this room or online, how many of you have ever been selfish? Raise your hand. Ever been selfish? Okay, if your hand ain't raised, call them a liar right now. No, don't do that. Don't do that. How many of you know someone who's stubborn? Raise your hand. How many of you are sitting beside them right now and you're married to them? How many of you know someone who's always late? Raise your hand. How many of you know someone who's loud? Raise your hand. If your hand ain't raised, if you know me, raise your hand. How many of you know someone who always procrastinates? Raise your hand. How many of you know someone who's always, not always, how many of you know someone who every now and then has some pride issue? Raise your hand. Every hand should be raised. Why? Because pride is the root cause of all sin. Listen, here's the deal. Could you imagine if you went around town wearing a sign, my name is Selfish Scott. My name is Stubborn Stacy. My name is Prideful Pete. My name is Loud Larry. My name is Late Lucy. My name is whatever, Impatient Isabel. And you had to go through life. Could you imagine? And how people would treat you and view you. And they would step away. They would treat you like you're a disease. Like you had a virus and they don't have anything to do with you. And that's what's happening to Bartimaeus. Let me make a connection here. I believe, and I know it's always dangerous when I say what I believe, but I believe almost every single one of us in this room and everyone online today, we have made destructive, negative decisions that have impacted our relationship with others and with God because of what other people have said to us or about us. Because of the labels they placed on us. You know what else I believe? I believe other people have made harmful, negative, ungodly decisions that have impacted their relationships with others and their relationship with God because of how we have viewed them, because of how we have treated them. We sang a song right before I got up called Made for More, and the very first line of that song says this. It says, I know who I am because I know who you are. The essence of great faith is knowing I am a sinner and I cannot save myself, but there is one who can. And I see Jesus for who he is. And Jesus does not see Bartimaeus the way anybody else in that community sees Bartimaeus. Ephesians 2:10 says it this way. It says, for we are God's masterpiece. We are God's masterpiece. Someone needs to hear this. I don't know if you're 13 years old, 23, 43, or 83. You need to hear these words. When God made you, he made you as a masterpiece. You are a work of art. He did not make a mistake when he made you the way he did. He does not make junk. He does not cast you off in the junkyard and says, oops, better go try again. No, you are fearfully made, wonderfully made, marvelously made, and you are his perfect masterpiece. And then if anybody ever makes you feel like you're not loved, wanted, accepted, or worthy, if they ever make you feel like you're deficient or lacking, Romans 5:8 says this, but God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. When you were not worthy, when you were not at your best, when you were making selfish, stubborn, prideful decisions, Jesus looked at you and said, you're worthy of my love and you're worthy of my death. If you want to display great faith in God and you're desperate for a move of God in your life, it starts with you seeing yourself the way Jesus does, and he looks at you and says, you're a masterpiece. Now, yes, we all have a sin condition and we need a Savior, and that's why he died for us while we were sinners. But the barrier between you and the miracle Jesus wants to bring you is simply the way you see yourself, or maybe the barrier is the way you see others. Number two, you got to stay focused on the mission. You got to stay focused on the mission. Jesus has given us a mission. Bartimaeus had a mission in life, and his mission in life was to get the attention of Jesus, to see Jesus. This is the spirit of this whole sermon series. The spirit of desperation is one who is singular-minded. Singular-minded. I do not get distracted. I shared a couple of weeks ago at our night of worship that when you are desperate for something, nothing can stop you from getting to it. And Bartimaeus did not let anything stop him from getting to it. If I've been on a long trip and I want to get home to my wife, listen, and they told me the only way you can get home to your wife is if you hike a snow-filled forest. Y'all know how much I hate snow. And guess what? I will hike through that snow field. If they told me the only way I could get to Tammy is if I ate a bowl of mac and cheese, I'm going to stomach it, but I'm going to do it. Why? Because I want to see my wife. If they told me the only way I could get to my wife is if I wear a Duke shirt, see you, babe. Everybody's got limits. Desperate. And Bartimaeus did not let anything or anyone stop him from getting to Jesus. He was blind, but he wasn't deaf. He heard that Jesus was here. Jesus was present. Jesus is in my town. Jesus is at my gate, by my road. And what did he say? He said, Jesus, Son of David. He called out Jesus by his prophetic name. He was part of the lineage of David, which means he had some knowledge and history of Jesus. And then he says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. You know, if you've been part of church, that grace is getting what we don't deserve. Grace is unlimited chances. When we blow it, when we mess up, when we take matters into our own hands, Jesus forgives and gives you unlimited chances. That's called grace. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. Not getting wrath, not getting judgment, not getting cast out from his presence. And Bartimaeus says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. In other words, here's what he says, Jesus, don't give me what I deserve. I know I'm a sinner. I know I've got issues. I know how people see me. Jesus, don't treat me the way everybody else has treated me. Have mercy on me. And he calls out. And what happens when he calls out? Everybody in the crowd says, be quiet. That's a nice way of them saying, shut up, Bartimaeus. He ain't got time for you. He's got more important things to worry about. He's got more important people to see. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. You're not, you're lacking. And so what happens? Listen, when he says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me, they say, be quiet. You know why they say be quiet? Not only because they're telling him, you're not worthy. Jesus has more important things to worry about. They hear this guy shouting and screaming. You know what they are? They're embarrassed. They're embarrassed to be near Bartimaeus. Come on, how many of you ever been embarrassed by somebody? Raise your hand. How many of you are parents in here? Raise your hand. Y'all remember when your kids embarrassed you? You're at the wedding, you're at the funeral, and they shout out in the middle of the wedding, is that the person you said that smells all the time? And they just you just want to hide, you want to bury your head. How many of you parents, come on, be honest, how many of you parents have ever embarrassed your kids? Raise your hand. Yeah, how many of you kids have ever been embarrassed by your parents? When you tell your parents that you're embarrassing me, your parent can do one of two things. They can go and hide in the corner, or they can make a bigger scene. I'm going to get you back for all the times you embarrass me. And so you make a bigger scene, and guess what Bartimaeus does? Bartimaeus doesn't go hide in the corner. Bartimaeus gets louder. It says, in fact, in the verse, he says, and then Bartimaeus shouted even louder, Jesus, Son of David. He was singular focused, singular minded. He did not get distracted by the crowd, by the noise, by all of the commotion. He didn't get distracted by the cultural wars, the political wars, the financial wars, the health wars. He didn't get distracted by all the things that can pull him to the right or to the left, but he kept his eyes straight forward on Jesus. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 25 says it this way, look straight ahead. Fix your eyes on what lies before you. In fact, I did not put this verse in there, but you know what the very next verse says in Proverbs 4? It says, don't get sidetracked. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right, and keep your feet from following evil. Listen to me. The more distracted you are, the more plates you have spinning in the air at any one time, the more distracted you are, the more discouraged you're going to get. The more distracted you are, the more frustrated with life you're going to be. The more distracted you are, the more impatient with people you're going to get. Listen, so Bartimaeus was singular focused, singular minded, didn't get distracted, didn't get pulled into all the wars. And you know what he did? His singular focus was on Jesus. I call out to Jesus. Men, have you ever been driving out of town and you're coming back into Danville, you're in Greensboro, you're 30 miles from home, and you look at your gas gauge and all of a sudden it's on E, and the light's on and your car starts talking to you, hey, stupid, pull over right now, get gas, and you look at that gas gauge and you think to yourself, I think I can make it. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about, because some of you did and some of you didn't. And so you pull in on fumes, and here you are at Sheetz, or you're at Sam's, or you're at Murphy, and all of a sudden you go and you got to fill up your gas tank for $75 because you're on fumes. You want that baby overflowing. And then you go to pay. Your family's out of town. Here you are in town. You got a weekend to yourself, and you go to pay. You ain't got no wallet. You got no money. You owe the gas station $75, and you ain't got nothing. And you know what you do? You pull out your phone, and you scroll through your contacts, and you're like, okay, who's got some money they can give me right now? Who really likes me? And you know what you do? You pull up your contact, and you hit the phone of someone that you know can step up quickly and in your time of need without asking questions. Bartimaeus, in his desperation and singular focus, he called out on the one person that he knew would show up on a given moment with no questions asked. Jesus, when you call on Jesus, he shows up. Some of you remember 10, 15 years ago in our town when Chick-fil-A and McDonald's had playgrounds. Now nobody has playgrounds except DRC. Come on, somebody. We're the only one with the indoor playground. And listen, it gets used all the time. But you remember those days. And I remember when my kids were little, and I'm not going to tell you if this happened with my kids or not, but maybe it did. But there you are, you're in Chick-fil-A. And your kids are in the indoor play area, and there's 47 kids in there for a play area that holds 14 kids. And they're all over the place, and there you are having your meal, you're eating your nuggets, you're eating your sandwich, and you're trying to have a little time with your wife, and the kids are in there, and then all of a sudden you hear one of your kids start to shout out, Daddy! Daddy! Come and help! Come and get me, Daddy! And you know your kid's voice. You can hear your kid's voice over a locomotive. You can hear it over a 747 because there's something distinguishable about your kid's voice. So you run into that play area and you see the sign that says, if you're taller than this, you can't get on the play equipment. And they got an attendant that sits in there, so you call your older kid to go up there and help the younger one crawl through the tube. And you're looking at the tube and you see them and you see they're scared and you hold up your finger through the tube and they hold up their finger. It's an E.T. moment for you 80s buffs. You want to phone home? And you walk them through the tube and they come down the net and they come down and they fall into your arms and they look at you and they say, Daddy, I knew you would come and get me. When you call out on the name of Jesus, he always runs to his children. And he comes and gets you and he navigates you through the barriers of life. You need a miracle? Do you see yourself and others the way Jesus does? Are you getting distracted by all the wars going on in our country? And I don't mean like literal wars. I mean wars in your mind, wars of the flesh, wars of discouragement, anxiety, priorities. Or are you singular focused on the mercy giver and the miracle worker? Number 3, you got to surrender your comforts. You got to surrender your comforts. So here's what happens. So they tell Bartimaeus, he's calling you. He is Jesus. He's coming through town. He's calling you. And Bartimaeus does one thing. He throws off his coat and he runs to Jesus. He throws off his coat. Now you got to understand there are 2 significant spiritual things about that coat. Number 1, the coat most likely in this context went from shoulders to feet. It had the potential to wrap around his knees if he was going to run. It had the potential to be tripped over. It had the potential to get in his way and be all kinds of stuff and to get clogged up. And so he threw aside the coat. Why? Because the coat was the one thing that was between him and Jesus as quick as possible. I believe this with all my heart, that every one of us in this room, every one of us online, we all got the one thing. We all got the one thing that has the potential to come between me and Jesus. I don't know what your one thing is. Money, a job, a relationship. I don't know what it is. But we all have the one thing that we desire. And so the coat was the one thing. And the second part about the coat, maybe you remember a few minutes ago, he was living by the roadside. He had nothing to his name. The only thing Bartimaeus had to his name was his coat. It's what he used to cover himself on a cold night. It's what he used to lay under his head when it was warmer nights. But it's the only thing he owned to his name. This goes against all cultural trends. You know what society says? Society says, hold on as tight as you can to what you've got and do whatever you can to get more than what you got. And Bartimaeus needed a miracle, and so you know what he was willing to do? He was willing to go against all society trends and say, not only am I going to hold on to what I've got, I'm going to let go of what I got. We sang a song a few minutes ago, said, come to Jesus, come to Jesus. And in that song it said this, so leave what's behind you behind. Do you know what's the barrier between you and the miracle you need? Here's the barrier. It's the one thing in your life that you don't want to let go of. It's the one thing in your life that you're holding on to for dear life. Now listen to me. Jesus didn't tell him let go of the coat. Jesus didn't say, I don't want you to have a coat. Jesus doesn't say, I don't want you to have a house, a car. Jesus isn't saying that. Here's what Jesus is saying. It's an attitude thing. Everything you've got, do you see it as belonging to you or belonging to him? And Bartimaeus is saying, everything I've got comes from you, and everything I've got belongs to you. In Hebrews chapter 12, it says it this way. It says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. Let us throw off every weight. Every weight. Have you ever walked around with weight on? You ever walked around with weight on your ankles? I was at the gym, and I told you that. At the gym, I saw people with a bar on their neck, and they're doing lunges, and they're like doing 40-pound, 50-pound, 60-pound lunges. Listen, I don't want to do lunges at all without a period. But here's the deal. After they get done with that, they put the bar up. And after they put the bar up, whether they're walking for 10 steps or 30 steps, because of how much weight was on their neck, on their shoulders, their legs are like Gumby. Just, walk. They're like breakdancing without even trying to breakdance. Why? Because of the weight they were carrying. Some of you parents, do you remember when your kids got to be a weight where you could no longer carry them? You could no longer hold them. You could no longer just pop them up and put them on your shoulders. Why? Because the longer you carry around the weight, the more damage it does to your physical body. And the longer you carry around that sin, the thing that you've allowed to become more important than God, the more damage it does to your soul. Listen, the Bible calls that, or sin, or weights, the Bible calls that idolatry, idols. The word idol in the Greek word comes from a word called epithumia. Epithumia means longing, desire, or craving. An idol is simply this. An idol is anything you crave more than God. And so here's the deal. It's anything you crave more than God. It has the potential to come between you and what Jesus wants to do for you. And so Bartimaeus threw aside the coat. He threw aside the one thing that could hinder how quickly he could get to Jesus. And he threw aside the one thing that he owned to his name. What are you holding on to? What do you need to let go of? And today, you surrender your comforts. Some of you right now, I already talked about it in our announcement time. Right now, you're in day 9 of 21 days of prayer and fasting. And you have surrendered some of your comforts in fasting. You've given up the things that you thought you couldn't live without. And so some of you right now, you're on day 9 of without caffeine or soda. You're on day 9 without sugars or sweets or desserts. You're on day 9 without steak or meat or burgers. You're on day 9 without fried foods. And you're realizing that just like Bartimaeus realized, you're realizing the very thing you thought you could not live without is nothing if I don't have Jesus. The very thing you thought was most important, you realized it was not nearly as important as being with Jesus. You want to see a miracle? Take what you have. He's not saying cast it aside. He's saying be willing to give it to me. Surrender it. And then number 4, you want to see a miracle? Number 4, you got to follow Jesus even when it's difficult. You got to follow Jesus even when it's difficult. It doesn't get easy. So how does the story go? So Bartimaeus comes to Jesus, and Jesus asks him the question that we asked you at the beginning of the message. What do you want me to do for you? Now let me ask you a question, okay? Audience participation, help me out. This is not rhetorical. How many of you believe that Jesus is all-knowing? Raise your hand, all-knowing. How many of you believe that he knew what Bartimaeus needed? Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. So why would an all-knowing Jesus, who knows that Bartimaeus is blind, why would he ask him, what do you want me to do for you? There are two thoughts on that. And that is simply this. When Jesus asked Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do for you? It's the same thing as if Jesus walked off this stage and sat down in front of you and whispered in your ear, what do you want me to do for you? Because here's the reality. Even though Jesus knows our heart and he knows what's in our mind, Jesus wants to know this. Do you way back there, do you know what you need Jesus to do? So often we just get generic. I just need you to do everything. Just give me peace. No. Jesus wants you to tell him that you recognize where you need him, to be specific. And so Bartimaeus says, I want to see. What would you tell Jesus? I want to what? Do you recognize what? And listen to me. Sometimes Jesus is saying this. You got to say it out loud. You got to verbalize it, whether it's in your private prayer or maybe you're meeting with another person for spiritual growth and accountability, and you can tell another spiritual person, here's what I need Jesus to do. So you need to be specific, and sometimes you just got to say it. Where do you need Jesus to show up today? And then the second reason why Jesus asked that question, and he already knew the answer, but he's asking us today is this. Not only do you know what you need, but number 2 is this. Do you have faith that I can fix it? The thing that you need the most, are you willing to give it to Jesus? Are you willing to bring it and lay it at his feet? And so here's what happens. Bartimaeus lays it at his feet, and Jesus answers his prayer. Jesus answers his prayer, and what does he say? He says, go, for your faith has healed you. Go, for your faith has healed you. Now, Bible scholars would tell us that phrase, your faith has healed you, can mean one or two things. One, it means you have received physical sight. Physical sight. The second thing, and we see this in other places in Scripture where Jesus says your faith has healed you, it also refers to salvation. Not only do you have physical sight, you also have eternal salvation. Your faith has not only made you physically well, it has made you spiritually well. And here's the question. When Jesus answers your need, your miracle, what's the first thing you do? Listen, if it's me and I'm Bartimaeus, I'm going back to all the buddies and say, see, look at me now. I told you so. I'd say, you want to fight now? You want to go after it? Listen, he'd be fighting for his name, his reputation. He'd be trying to get revenge, trying to knock them down, make them feel bad. Jesus even said, go, your faith has healed you. The word go insinuates, go back home. Go back to where you came from. But what does it say instead? And look at this again. It says this. It says, instantly the man could see, and what did he do? He followed Jesus down the road. He followed Jesus down the road. And can I ask you this question? You already know it. You don't have to answer it. Where was Jesus headed? To the cross. He was headed to Jerusalem. He was headed to the road of suffering. He was headed to the crucifixion. Now, I'll be honest. I don't know if he made it all the way to Jerusalem. I don't know if he made it to the crucifixion. I don't know. Scripture doesn't tell us. I'm not sure. But here's what I do know. I do know this, that the first thing Bartimaeus saw when his eyes were opened, the first thing he saw when his eyes were opened was Jesus. And I know this. Once he saw Jesus, he never took his eyes off Jesus. And once he saw Jesus, he did not go back to where he came from. He followed wherever Jesus went. It is important that you start following Jesus. Some of you, that's your miracle today. Start following Jesus. But listen to me. You know what's even greater than starting to follow Jesus? To never stop following Jesus. To follow him and finish well. Look what it says in 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy says this. It says, endure suffering along with me as good soldier of Jesus Christ. This is a trustworthy saying. If we die with him, we will also live with him. If we endure hardship, we will also reign with him. If you endure the road, if you endure the suffering, if you endure the difficulty, if you endure the pain, you will live with him and you will reign with him. And I believe today that's what Bartimaeus is doing. And I believe today that's what Jesus wants you to do. Would you pray with me? With your head bowed and your eyes closed. Are you on the road? Have you started following Jesus? Have you started walking with Jesus? Have you stopped? If Jesus came and whispered in your ear, what do you need me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? Would you have an answer? What do you need? What's keeping you today? What's your barrier? Is it the way you see yourself? Is it the way you see others? What's your barrier? Are you getting distracted by all the things going on around you, or are you focused on what lies before you? Are you calling on the one, or are you calling on everyone but the one who can bring the miracle? Are you still holding on to something that today you need to let go of? Life's not easy. Life gets hard. There was a day when you started following Jesus, but if you're being honest, you've stopped. Team's going to lead us into this song. It's one of my favorite songs. It reminds me every day, I need you, Lord. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Here I come. It's where I bow before you. I find my rest, my holiness, my righteousness. I find before you, and here's the deal. At some point during this worship song, if you need Jesus to step into a situation in your life, would you just come and leave it with him at the altar? And if there's a barrier that's between you and Jesus today, would you leave it at the altar? Lord Jesus, you know our heart. You know where we need you. We call out to you here. We call out to you now. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Let's stand. Let's worship. Let's respond. The altar is open.